So Tipperary will welcome Waterford to FBD Simple Stadium this Sunday for the last group game in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, knowing that a win over Waterford will put Tipperary into this year's Munster final. A draw will at least guarantee a spot in the knockout stages, and a loss will mean that Tipperary will be depending on other results in the Limerick versus Cork game to see our fate. Joining me this evening is former Tipperary hurler David Kennedy, Brian O'Meara, also Tipperary former hurler, and indeed the man in the middle this week, Michael Dundon. So, lads, you're all very welcome to Tipp GAA TV.
Thanks very much, John.
Yep. So, lads, maybe we'll just take a look back at that match last Sunday. Fantastic game of hurling, huge crowd in FBD Simple Stadium, and Tipperary really did come of age that last Sunday, David, and I think we spoke about it before the game. You said that Tipperary would have to go to a place, the players would have to go to a place that they never were before to maybe overcome Limerick or at least draw with them. Did they get there?
Well, they almost got there, Jonathan. They certainly hurled to a level I think a Tipp team hasn't hurled, I think, since 2019, that epic second half against Wexford. And yet it wasn't good enough to actually topple Limerick, and I think that's a testament to how fantastic this Limerick team are. But there were some fantastic individual performances as well as a group performance, and I think last week I mentioned should Tipperary get the win, it could crown the team. While we didn't get the win, I think the performance will bring the team on in leaps and bounds and should really give them confidence going into this weekend. Not overconfident, of course, they'll have to keep that confidence in check, but it has set a template for them and how to go forward, how to compete with the top guns now in this championship. And I think going forward now, it'll improve them, and I think they're going in the right direction.
And Brian, for you, what did you take out of the game last Sunday?
For me, the big thing is that Tipperary were the aggressors from the word go. It's been a while since a Tipperary team has been taking the field and I suppose setting the tone, and we really set the tone from the word go last week. One passage of play in particular came to mind. I was sitting on the right hand side in the Killinen end and following the ball, and Dan McCormick and Garrod Hegarty were on the ground rolling around. The ball passed over the two of them. The game continued on. Now no forward is going to be initiating that, you know, it's the wing back that's initiating that, and Tipperary were initiating that all over the field. Alan Tynan's, in your face performance, constantly, no step back. That's the big thing for me. And, having said all that, the Limerick team, matched that, and they matched that every day. So that's why we were treated as such a fantastic spectacle, really. And it's two teams on the same trajectory, I would say. Both teams improving in every game. And John Kiley referred to it after the match, how he felt the Limerick team were improving match on match on match. And I would say that was probably Limerick's best performance and Tipp's best performance.
And Michael, we mentioned it the last day as well, that sometimes Tipperary had this tendency maybe after half time to maybe drop off a little bit and give the opposition the chance to come back into the game. It happened a small little bit now last Sunday, but maybe not as much, and that's another positive, really.
Well, it is. I think Tipp's progress has been kind of incremental. We're getting stronger as we go along. I remember thinking at half time when we had 3 or 4 points lead, and thinking to myself, we've been here before against Limerick. And then as the openers of the second half came about and Limerick came back and went in front, I was saying, hopefully this isn't going to happen again. But it's testament to the belief that the guys have in themselves now, that they were able to cope with that and come back. And with a couple of minutes to go, we were actually in front. And it would have been an awful injustice had we lost the game, I think. Having said that, would have been equally unfair to Limerick. I thought a draw, if ever it was a fitting result, it was the one. But I think the significant thing for me in it was that Limerick took off Garrod Hegarty. They took off Cahill Lynch.
Ian Lynch,
and they were two big players for Limerick that didn't figure in the game at all. The problem I would have had with last Sunday was the scope that Shane O'Neill got. I think he scored, was it 5 points or something in the thing, and he was their go-to man big time last Sunday. And I suppose, in fairness to management, he was kind of sprung on him in as much as he wasn't to be in their starting 15. So if you're planning your strategy with who's going to mark who, that kind of thing, he probably didn't figure in the equation. So it took a bit of time to come to terms with that. But overall, I think what most Tipp people would have been delighted with was the spirit that the guys showed, and they were relentless in their determination that they weren't going to be beaten. And I think that came out. Now, some might say that the last three was softish to make a draw of it, and I wouldn't altogether argue with that. But having said that, there was a few decisions that went against us that could have changed the thing, earlier than that. So overall, I think we're making progress. I think we have more progress to make than Limerick have, in as much as that they've been there and we know what they can do, whereas our lads, the whole thing is evolving at the moment.
Yeah, and you spoke about it there as well, the impact of some of the bigger Limerick players maybe nullified to a certain degree last Sunday. And Noel actually spoke on the show last week, and he said, Tipperary would have to kind of stop the Limerick half-back line from scoring. And they did that fairly well, because the Limerick half-back line only scored 2 points from play. So that was a big one now for our half-forward line, really.
Well, I never saw Dermot Byrne, for example, make as many mistakes, handling mistakes, and I know he missed a few frees, but he was, and that to me was the fact that he's been pressurised all the way, and I think that was the key to him. You would think back, when was Kyle Hayes as quiet?
I was just going to say about Kyle Hayes, and we mentioned last week, I'd fear him more as a wing back than as a centre forward, because as a centre forward he has to be marked, and you know your man. As a wing back, he's harder to mark because he's on the move so many times. And then I think in the first half, especially in the first half, he made 4 or 5 attempts to rampage up the field, which he's really, really good at, and he was swallowed up straight away. Now, he offloaded a number of hand passes, but he didn't have the same freedom that he'd had in previous occasions. Remember that goal he scored against us down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where he just came up the field and there wasn't a finger laid in him.
Yeah.
I tell you, he got the ball last Sunday, and I think he'd only taken 5 steps, and he'd been hit once, twice, and 3 times, and that just showed the work rate coming from that magic number 5 group of half forwards, midfielders, and half backs. So yeah, the real pressure and the real squeeze is put on the Limerick half backs. So that's their launch pad for all their good moves going forward. And you're talking about Keane and Garrod, I think, and I am a huge fan. I think we all are huge fans of Garrod, Hegarty, and Keane Lynch, and we've all huge respect for the two guys. But the Garrod, Hegarty even have the ball in his hands in the first half? Did he have it? He made very rare.
He got one great chance. One great chance that he put wide.
In the first half, especially in the first half. And Keane was blocked, standing, hitting it. Really uncharacteristic for him. But you have to take your hat off to the likes of Brian O'Meara, who probably was very close to being man of the match. A very unsung hero in the way he went about applying the pressure on Keane Lynch. Dan McCormick got his epic performance from him. Regardless of what Garrod Hegarty's form is like, you still have to be at 100% to contain the guy. And I think Dan and Brian were just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
And the other thing there was, we had been conceding goals in our previous matches. But obviously we had learned from that, because the defence was a lot tighter last week. And above all the teams going, Limerick would be the ones that would just go through you.
Yeah. And like, that's to carry on from that, Brian. I'm not sure, was there any actually shot on goal last Sunday?
No, I was thinking of that coming up in the car, and I came out of Ennis with that was the major concern from my perspective. I thought we looked a little cumbersome at the back, and Clare handed us 3 goals in the first 20 minutes of that game, and we went on to score 2 more. But they scored 3 themselves, and I thought we were susceptible to pace at the back. And again, then when Cork came looking for goals against us, when they needed goals, they got them. And again, you're thinking to yourself, okay, we're certainly going in the right direction, but have we issues with pacey forwards? Now, it's the one caveat that I'd still have on the whole performances up to date. is that Limerick aren't really a goal team. Limerick scored 30 points, 31 points in the All-Ireland final, I think, 2 years ago. They don't go looking for goals. Now, we held our shape very well last week, but I suppose it's one reservation I still have in terms of meeting a real pacey team. You have to be super organised now, and I thought we were super organised last Sunday against Limerick. Those runs from where a wing forward tries to drag a wing back across the field. You had Owen Connolly being very disciplined and holding his position in front of Aaron Gillan so that whole pitch doesn't open up in front of Aaron Gillan. So we had that discipline about us, and we had the teamwork then, to the communication on the field. But Limerick didn't look like scoring a goal. Tipp didn't look like scoring a goal. But that's the kind of team Limerick are. Limerick play that way. John Kindly said they created 24 scoring chances in the second half. We created 14. He felt they won the second half quite comfortably. Now, we scored 9 points, so we did have a dip in performance in the second half. But, in a team like Tipperary, who are kind of on the up, that's something that we'll work on, and that's something that we'll improve on as time goes on. And the management will know that. They'll know there's aspects of the performance that need to be improved on. And but it's great not to concede a goal,
And I think that's an issue that's going to be very important next Sunday, because Waterford are a goal scoring team. Well, they try to score goals, and they have such fast paced forwards. Dessie Hutchison, to name but one, and they'll try and exploit his pace to create goal chances. So Brian is correct. The issues that we had against Clare and Cork are not gone away just because they weren't an issue last Sunday. They're going to be very much to the fore this coming Sunday, and I think Tipp will really have to be on their heels and on their toes, to make sure we're not opened up, because that's what Waterford love to do. They love to run and create space. And go back to the league match we had here against Waterford earlier in the year, while Waterford may not have performed at the level that we were expecting them to, they created a significant amount of goal chances, if I'm correct in saying, and Barry Hogan had to make a number of impressive saves in the second half especially. So that danger is still there, and I think Liam and the management will be looking at that and going, let's prepare for scenarios where Waterford are going to try and open us up.
The only thing on that is that I think of all the managers in the country, Liam Cahill should be more prepared than anyone for what Waterford are going to throw at us, because largely what he has been doing with them has carried through a bit. I know Davy has his own way of doing things, but nobody, I'd say, is as familiar with the Waterford setup as Liam Cahill is, and with the capabilities of the individual players. So you'd be hoping that we'd be able to get that end of it right in terms of making sure that we get the win that we need. And I know a draw might do us, but you want to be talking about a win. You want to be talking about a draw. It's going to be a tricky one.
Yeah, and just before we finish up on the Limerick game, I suppose we discussed it last week. We spoke about it, the introduction of Rhys Shelley in goals. He didn't do anything wrong.
He did well enough, I thought. I think he had a dodgy enough start. I think he'll admit himself. There were 2 or 3 puck-outs, didn't go to target, and they were intercepted and they turned over. But all credit to him, he settled down after that. He really took control of the game. His second half performance was really, really solid. And, he was very, very reliable. And again, his first big day out. I know you can play Fitzgibbon Cup finals and under 20s and what have you, but as a senior inter-county match against the All-Ireland champions in Thurles on a fantastic weather and everything that lends itself to a big occasion, I thought he really, really played well. You have to ask yourself, how did he feel first 10-15 minutes went? He scored his point from the free, which is a really good way to start your day. 1 or 2 went a little bit off, but I say if he had 34 or 5 puck-outs after that, most of them went to where he wanted them to go, and that's a very reassuring sign for Rhys going forward.
That's kind of the key element that rises him above other keepers, really. I seen him against Mullinahone in a county final the year before last, and he was the difference between the two teams from the goal. So that's quite unusual in any match, and it was just his comfort on the high ball. He was happy to come out 25-30 yards on a solo run, pick a fella out down the field, and I came away from that match thinking there's a guy who has the kind of presence that you would see in an inter-county player. You know, he
And
just
experienced as a county
just,
player, yeah.
It just had that presence on the pitch that you kind of said to yourself, he's full of confidence, and you know he can develop into a real serious
And
goalkeeper.
I think this Sunday's game, the way Waterford play, will actually suit him even more, because Waterford tend to lay off and stand off their back, and they'll give opportunities to Reece and our other goalkeepers to find that puck out, where Limerick are pushing up on the puck out, making it really difficult to find your target. And I think Waterford are a little bit standoffish. They let you take the puck out, and I think that will really suit Reece to a large extent.
I think you're right in that. The last when Waterford played here the last day against Clare, when the ball went wide at one end, they all drew back to the far end. It was like an old practice match playing backs and forwards.
Yeah.
Everybody dropped back, so they actually gave you their half of the field to start. A fella like Ree Shelley, if he got a short puck out, he came out. He couldn't nearly hit it over the bar that let him out so far. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So look, I'm delighted for Reece. I said last week I was excited to see how he was going to play. I was proved right. He's going to be hard to dislodge. I think he's going to be the go-to guy now for the next number of seasons. Injuries and form, all things going well, he's going to be the number one goalkeeper for the next few years. And
of course, another fantastic performance from Noel McGrath as well.
Yeah, Noel was excellent. And no disrespect, I was surprised he got man of the match. I didn't think he was man of the match, but he had a fine game. He has a terrific sense of where other players are on the field, and he can pick out these kind of unusual sort of passes that the ordinary guys don't do. I remember going back years ago in our own club, training with Jimmy Doyle. Jimmy Doyle was like that. He'd pick a pass that you couldn't dream. Where did he come up with that? And Noel is able to do that, and he's an excellent leader, and the kind of a guy, everywhere you take him, he's the kind of guy you'd like leading your team.
Yeah. I think what Noel does well, he does the simple things very, very well. There's nothing very flash about what he does. Like, he gave a lovely pass on to was it Jake in the first half. It was only a 5-yard, 10-yard stick pass, but it was the right pass. Like, he could have travelled up the sideline and gone for glory himself. No, he gave the simple pass. And of course we talk about that pass to Conor Bowe, Conor's first point. Like, how did he see it? Well, only Noel could have seen it. But Noel's great trick is, and I've mentioned it before, if Noel has the ball 10 times, I say 9 times out of 10 no one's going to get a tackle on him, because when he gets the ball, he sees an opponent in front, he'll move away. He won't go looking for contact. He moves away into a space and gives himself that opportunity to play the ball or offload a pass. So he doesn't look for contact, he avoids contact.
Isn't that a real special talent though in the modern game, when you consider the congestion in the area that Noel plays in the middle of the field? And you know, there is no space, but Noel McGrath finds space, and no other player seems to be able to find space.
And one of the great things about him is that, going on from what you said, Brian, that he can get a shot away in the most difficult situation when there are guys around him, and he hasn't a big wide swing, but he has this lovely tidy swing that he's able to get power and accuracy into it in a very tight situation. There's very few players around, you'll see, that can do that sort of thing.
He's a guy who I saw a stat a few years ago where Eddie Brennan in an All-Ireland final, he had I think it was 11 possessions, but he only had the ball in his hand for about 3.5 seconds. And I'd say Noel McGrath is something similar. You know, he could have 9 or 10 possessions in a match, but he's not going to be holding on to the ball for longer.
I think he had 13 possessions last weekend, and bar one, I think every one of them found a target.
Yeah.
And it also makes an awful lot of sense for a player at this stage in Noel's career, that he's actually making the ball work. Yeah. And he's conserving his own energy. But
Noel has always been like that. We've seen him with the club, that he's always been conservative with it. His father was very much like that. Yeah. Pat was a conservative player, wasn't travelling the field. Noel travels the field, and he goes into spaces and he makes himself available for the pass. Well able to win his own ball when it has to be won. He's not afraid to get into tackles, and he hits hard. He hits very hard. I know that because I ended up my backside one night at a training session. This guy is a real big unit of a guy as well, and his work rate off the ball is always big, but on the ball he just is able to go away and avoid contact and give a simple. He just does the simple
super
things
efficient.
really well. Efficiency. Yeah. As a matter of interest, Michael, who would you have picked as man of the match?
It would have been a difficult one. In the first half, I would have gone for Jake Morris.
Yeah.
I thought Jake Morris had the fear of God in the Limerick backline. Every time he got the ball, he puts the head down and he's going and he's jinking, and he's caused them enormous problems. He would have been the one. No, he wasn't as prominent later on, but I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, he scored 5 from play, I think. Was it? Yeah. That's an incredible performance.
Contribution.
And Jake Morris has really taken up the mantle now, where we've say the likes of Jason Ford and not available for selection. Jake is now the go-to guy now. He has been the go-to guy. He scored against Clare. He got his few goals, 3 goals. Yeah. He follows that up against Cork with a number of points, and now he's after 5 points against that Limerick full back line. Yeah. I know they're missing Stephen Finn. You'd say Stephen Finn kept him scoreless in the league semi-final, but to score 5 points in an inter-county hurling match against Limerick is a fair treatment.
It is, and I mean, right, Stephen Finn was missing, or Sean Finn was, or Steve, Sean Finn, he was missing. But I mean, all the talk we've heard all along was how strong Limerick were on the bench. That they had the guys to come in. They could afford, if you can say you could afford to lose 1 or 2 guys, but they were still so strong. They had all these big guys coming in. So suddenly one of their backmen goes. Yeah. And they get a roasting inside. I thought the Limerick inside backline was in terrible trouble in the first half with Mark Kehoe and Jake Morris, and particularly with Jake Morris.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that has to do with Jake and Mark were given such
wonderful
ball. Again, just easy ball. I won't say easy. It's not easy when you have a backman sitting on your back, but it was to their advantage. And when you have a good sticksman like Erode and the 3 boys, Mark and Jake, it's to their advantage. To get 5 ball in, they're going to win 2 or 3, and 2 or 3 is going to turn into a score. And like Tipp were being very efficient. I remember, if you look back the way Tipp were playing 2 or 3 years ago, you'd hate to be a corner forward because the ball was hit so hard at you.
Yeah.
Or a ball for Jake was a bounce in front of him, or just he could control it softly on the hurley. And you can have all the good forwards you want. If you don't hit the ball into them right, it's very hard for them to make the most of it.
That's a tribute to the guys further back the field, that they were delivering the kind of ball,
Isn't that the way the game has gone? The league match in Limerick against Tipp, it was the first time I kind of saw that Limerick team in the flesh, and their forwards don't shoot under pressure. No. They pass the ball around until the man is loose and he shoots the ball over the bar. And that's the way they play the game. Now, okay, Seamus Fleming came out under the old stand the other day and scored a miraculous point over his shoulder with Cathal Barrett at full stretch trying to block him. But they generally don't score points like that. No. They just, it's a team effort, teamwork, pass it around. And, Tipp, Mark Kehoe threw a lovely simple ball out to Jake in the first half over the bar. Same as Noel's pass to Jake, he cuts inside over the bar. Mark Kehoe got a point as well that I was a Garrod through to him, simple point over the bar, and that's the way you need to play the game.
And I think Limerick are the template of how to be a good forward unit. A lot of their points, guys on their own.
Yeah, they're on their own.
They're hitting it on their own. They're making themselves available. They're going away from the ruck. They're making themselves, because they're so good at winning the ball on the ruck. If there was a negative, I think, for Tipp last Sunday, I think it's the amount of balls we didn't win in the ruck. How many rucks did we actually get in, come out with the ball? I think I didn't count them, but my feeling was we won very, very few of them, where Limerick were winning quite a lot of them. And when you have the ball in your hand, when you have possession, you're in control of the game. And I think that's an area where Tipp could and should and need to improve on.
Okay, well, let's look ahead now to this game on Sunday afternoon in FBD Simple Stadium. The team has been announced, and let's go through the team. It is as follows. In goal, Rhys Shelley. The full back line then of Cathal Barrett, Michael Breen and Ronan Maher. In the half back line, Owen Connolly, Brian O'Meara and Seamus Kennedy. Centre field, Dan McCormack and Alan Tynan. The Tipperary half forward line of Conor Stakelum, Patrick Bonner-Maher and Noel McGrath. And the full forward line of Jake Morris, Garrod O'Connor and Mark Kehoe. So lads, no change to the team and no change to the subs. So your thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, I suppose the first thing that you'd have to say is the fact that they've announced an unchanged team is basically an endorsement from the selectors of the performance of the guys that you chose to do the job last week against Limerick. I don't think anyone would argue against the fact that the same 15 have started now. They didn't all have kind of man-in-the-match performances, but the unit as a unit, they function so efficiently together, and there was a great understanding about it. So I'm not surprised that there has been no change, particularly when Jason was, as I understand it, not fully fit to go back yet, and it would have been a gamble to chance them at this stage. So hopefully we have a team there that's capable of doing the business. I say nobody would know the Waterford setup better than Liam Cahill, and I'm sure he'll have the boys tutored as to what's expected of them and where they're to do it. It's a bit of a banana skin for Tipperary playing Waterford, because so few people, and particularly when you read the papers or listen to radio interviews, so few people are giving Waterford a chance, that you'd be afraid of your life that this would be the time that they would produce a performance to kind of redeem what has been a very disappointing year for them. But overall, I think the confidence that the management have placed in the team is justified, and I hope it will be further justified tomorrow.
Yeah, and Brian, you know, Waterford, they're going to come to Thurles on Sunday, and they want to prove a point. You know, they haven't won any game. They won't want to get bit by Tipperary. You know, and so since their last game now, how will they have approached this? You know, the last game against Tipperary, they're out of the championship. You know, what way will the players and the management in Waterford are they going to approach this game on Sunday?
Look, I work in Waterford. I'm working in Waterford for 20 years, and I know the Waterford psyche and the people, and they're at a low ebb, to be 100% honest. They've played 16 Munster Championship games in the last 4 years and won one, and that was against Tipp last year in Welsh Park. And you know, they haven't a great record underage either in terms of what's coming. Now, having said that, some of their performances have been good underage. Against Cork, they've come close to that Cork team that won the under-20 All-Ireland. So Conor Prunty apparently has had surgery this week and is not available for Sunday. Massive loss to the Waterford team on Sunday, if that is the case, and apparently that is the case. And they're out of the championship. So, you know, when they went back on the following Tuesday night, they had two choices. They throw down tools and forget about it for this year, or the shackles, whatever nervousness that they've been playing under for the last number of matches, where their performances haven't been great, that they just decide to throw all that away and say, you know what, we have a free shot at Tipperary in our next game. And I think that's the only approach they could possibly take to it. You know, and we talk about Davy and his approach to matches, and like some of the setup on the pitch over the last few matches has been strange. You know, where their defensive line comes very much out the field. The goal against Clare was a 2-on-2 situation in their half of the field. There was two Clare backs, two Waterford backs and two Clare forwards. You cannot function that way. And you'd imagine they'd have put that right. Like, the ball breaks to the forward, it's a goal, more or less, in a 2-on-2 situation. So they would have had a load of time to try and put those things right, have potentially a heart-to-heart as to say, okay, this management team are in place for the next couple of years. We have a chance to start now and to go to Thurles, and we have a free shot at Tipperary. And if we can stay in the game, to half time, if we can stay in the game with 15 minutes to go, Tipperary will get nervous. And they'd love nothing more than to upset our dreams of being in the Munster final against Clare. You know, it's a really strange one for them. They're if you look at form, you know, there's only one winner next Sunday, but you know, stranger things have happened. So we'll wait and see what kind of a Waterford team turns up, and whether they're just left to play the Waterford way as opposed to trying being overcoached.
And bear in mind, when Waterford played Limerick here in the championship, it was a match Waterford could have won.
Yes, yeah.
You know, the chances were there for them to do it, and what has happened subsequently, kind of, I don't know, the bottom fell out of their world in hurling terms, but certainly the day here against Limerick, I saw it. I was at the match here. They looked well capable of beating Limerick. I thought that day, and if you analyse it the other way, then we were put to the pin of our collar to get the draw against Limerick last week.
I was thinking just on that point, Michael, that I was saying last week, Waterford invested so much emotionally into that Limerick performance, and it was a credible performance, but I think the last 10-15 minutes they lost their shape and they lost their structure, and they were just pumping ball long into the square, not the Waterford way of hurling. I think they just were getting desperate for something, and they just fell so flat now in the subsequent games against Cork and especially against Clare. It was such a poor performance. It was so uncharacteristic of them. Like, you know, the one thing you pride or you notice about Waterford is the energy they bring to a game, and they love this game of chaos. It's a game of chaos Waterford play. They play it better than any other team.
They love a shootout.
They love a shootout. And back in our day, Brian, you know, when we played that Waterford team 2002, we never played against a team like them. A game of chaos. We didn't know who we were marking, where we were going, and it was such a new way of hurling, and they thrive in that. We're now, and it's the thing I have about the teams that Davy Fitz coaches, is they're hurling by numbers. I think they take the instinct out of it, and Waterford are blessed with the most instinctive players in the game at the moment, and I think the instinct has been taken out of them a little bit, and if they're let off the leash this Sunday, they're a formidable outfit, like a really dangerous outfit, and that would be my fear, is that they say, look, we're going to go at this, I'm going to hurl the way we want to hurl.
But further to that, David, the Waterford-Limerick match, I think it took an enormous amount out of Waterford.
Yeah.
And I think they paid the penalty afterwards. What we would need to be wary of is how much last Sunday's match will have taken out of our lads. I mean, it was as intense and you know, a physically demanding a match as I've seen in a long, long time. And it has to take its toll.
And there are talks, like say Cathal Barrett was hit a concussion. Is he fit to play? Has he made a recovery? I know he's named, but
I know the unnamed. I'm surprised it's the same 15, given the game of attrition it was last week. And it's either, you know, huge testament to the strength and conditioning guy that they were all after coming through. 3 Sundays out of 4, is it, or three games out of 5 weeks?
And my observation from last Sunday was, say, that Garrod. I found Garrod probably tired a lot towards the last 5-10 minutes of that game. I think Marcio tired coming towards the end of that game. Conor Stakelum tired coming to it. It's just a huge effort that they had put into it. It's not a criticism. It's just, and the 7 days isn't a huge time to turn around and peak again, like, you know. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Liam and the management the likes of Sean Ryan perhaps, or Johnny Ryan might start instead of what's named here, because, as Brian's saying, it was a war of attrition last week, and it takes a long time for the body to recover from that and to be at a peak performance for 7 days later.
Could Seamus Callan or John McGrath figure early in the game, given what you're saying, two lads would be much fresher?
Yeah, you look at Bonner. He again, Bonner did what Bonner does best. But like again, he was taken off maybe 10 feet. I don't know what time he was taken off at. And there's a fourth forward that tired, you know, and do they have the energy levels to continue on and do that again?
You would think from, you know, the banana skin, as you say, type of game that it is, that it would make sense to give guys an opportunity next Sunday, because that will up the intensity of the Tipperary performance if you've guys trying to stake their claim on a spot. So it would really make sense for John McGrath and Conor Bowe and, you know, Sean Ryan to be in that game really early and to be trying to nail down a spot and take the game to Waterford.
I'd be a big fan of Sean Ryan, the energy and the pace he brings. You look at Conor there last week, he just looked as if he'd been there for 5 or 6 years, the confidence he hurls with. But I think you need loads of energy, loads of pace, and there is loads of energy and loads of pace, like Jake and Marcio. I mean, they're probably the two of the fastest corner forwards in the game at the moment, but just to be a little bit concerned about maybe fatigue setting in at this stage.
Yeah, well, that will be the problem, as I say, and that's an imponderable. You don't know how much last Sunday has taken out of guys until you actually go out and they have to make the runs, and suddenly it begins to feel a lot harder.
But not just the physical exertion, but it's the mental exertion.
Yeah.
Again, like you can imagine the talk and the mind games that were done to get yourself to perform to the level you did last Sunday, and now next week there's only going to be 15,000 people at this game. There's going to be no real buzz about Thurles Town. It's going to be a very low profile build up to the game. Waterford are hiding in the long grass. So I mean, you have to get yourself up. You have to peak again now 7 days later, and to go into a totally different environment. You know, that'd be my concern.
You're very negative there, altogether.
No, I just think you have to be cautious of these things.
But the Waterford crowd probably won't like
Travel.
the Waterford team feed off their crowd, and when they get a performance, there's 20,000 Waterford people in the stand. You know, it's a real formidable place to be. You know,
But I don't
as
think
we know,
Liam.
but-
I don't think Liam will allow that complacency to kick in. I always remember many years ago we were preparing for a game here in town, and I don't know who were playing Clare, but Liam could sense the apathy amongst the group of us, our players in the warm up, and he remember him coming bringing together. And he says how he could sense it and he could feel it, and I don't think we appreciated it because we went out the following Sunday and were beaten. And I always reflect on that, how Liam could pick up the vibes and say he knows going into this week you can't let any complacency kick in, or reflect to pat yourself in the back for a job well done last week. You need to be thinking next week.
Yeah, but he's in the fortunate position, I'd say, David, that he has the ammunition on the sideline to change. I mean, Seamus Callan, as I said, John McGrath, Brian McGrath, Conor Bowe, you have guys that are match winners in their own right, and that we're probably better equipped now than we were, say, last year, in fairness to Colm, or the year before, with talent available that can change, guys that can change matches. So they are, and that's a big plus facing into something like that on Sunday.
Yeah, and of course we have to say, obviously, when we're speaking here, it's Thursday evening, so we're not aware as we speak. Actually, Liam is in Dublin at his hearing, so we're not aware what capacity Liam will or will not be at the game on Sunday. Like, and I suppose following on from that, like for instance, if Liam is unavailable on Sunday, like, what impact would that have on the group of players or on the management, like that he's not there with them, he's not in the dressing room, he's not on the sideline? Or are they so, I suppose, for want of a better word, so professional now at this point in time as a group of players, and that once they go out in the field it won't really matter to them, David?
I don't think it'll make any odds where Liam is at the moment. I mean, Nicky English used to say, I remember we quote Nicky on this, he used to say, it doesn't matter what you do in the sideline. If Jesus was on the sideline, he couldn't do anything that goes on. He can't control anything that's on the pitch. And I think the game of hurling and all sports and all these team sports, players have to be able to think for themselves, and they're going to be so well prepared to go out and play the game. And whatever Waterford bring to the game Sunday, these players and any player that comes on, they're able to make up their own minds. They don't need to be coming over and getting guidance from Liam how to play the game. They can play on instinct. So yeah, it's an inconvenience as much as anything. That's all it is. I think it's an inconvenience. The real, like Mickey Hart used to say, All Irelands are won in the preparation of the All Ireland. It's the work that has been done already. It's just to go and perform it today.
But Liam and Mikey Beavens are a unit, like, on the sideline. So like that unit is broken now, and you know, if Liam is unavailable, and Liam will probably be replaced by Declan Laffin on the sideline. So that's a new unit for Declan and Mikey to gel together on the sideline to make the quick decisions and stuff like that. But I'm sure, like, you're talking about two top class guys there as well, and they will make the right calls in conjunction with the selectors, Paddy and TJ up in the stand anyway.
But the real strength of a management team is that everybody knows what's expected of them and what has to be done. So that in a sense, if you have your template or your management template in place, whether it is Tom, Dick or Harry is the top man, shouldn't really matter, because everybody is working to a set programme. I wouldn't altogether agree with David. I think Liam Kerr would be a loss on the sideline, because he has that kind of passion and motivation. And you know yourself from your playing days, if you're anybody sluggish and the next thing you get a shot up the backside from the manager out on the sideline, and, you know, which is important. But
I think, Michael, if he is not on the sideline, it can become a cause for the team. You know, and they can take it that says, we're going to do this for the management, and you can turn it into a positive.
We could develop the Clare psyche if they're all out to get us.
There's also, don't forget, a Waterford element to Liam not being on the sideline. Like, there could be a motivating factor for the Waterford players looking at Liam Cahill on the sideline, you know, having left the Waterford setup, and I'm sure Davy Fitz, it wouldn't be lost on him to use that in order to motivate the Waterford boys, because they need something to motivate themselves for the game on Sunday, because they're out of the championship at the moment. So, you know, all those little things will be used in the build up to this game down in Waterford in order to get a performance. So, you know, if Liam Cahill's not on the sideline, it might nullify that little element of.
And you know, it's a drama that we don't need.
Yeah.
We don't need that drama on the
sideline.
sideline.
But from a Tipperary perspective, I think he'd be a loss. But I get the cause bit as well. I don't think the players need it really. It's it's a game that's, they should treat it as a Munster semi-final. That's what they should treat it as. And, you focus on your own performance, you forget about who you're playing, and you go and you get yourself into a Munster final. It's as simple as that.
Well, you're at the knockout stage of the championship now, because you have to go out and get a result. With the round robin, you can be caught in the match and you'll make amends for later on. But right now, we need to get something out of Sunday. So guys have to be on their toes to know that nothing less than their best effort will do the trick. It's a thing that I'm not too clear on. If Liam was suspended, can he stay in the stand wired up to somebody saying down the line,
I think I'm led to believe he can't have any contact whatsoever.
No. Yeah.
But I'm
How
sure
do
lads
you
are
monitor that?
be very inventive. Sure, we have to go hiding in the stands
Mobile
somewhere.
phones work in Thurles, don't they?
They do. How do you monitor it?
Well, I'm sure if Liam is suspended, he'll adhere to all the rules and protocols that are put in place.
That's why you're the PRO, Giles.
I don't know. We won't go down the road of rules and protocols.
I think I know they're doing and that sort of thing, but in fairness to the man, his track record is such that he doesn't deserve. I don't know what was said or what happened. I didn't even realise it had happened.
Well, the ball went off the Limerick man anyway.
This is the point I'm going to make. He was actually correct in his reading of the situation. Nobody would condone anybody abusing officials, but in the heat of a moment, officials have to have a bit of common sense too.
Yeah, but you look at other managers in the GAA, and there's a certain manager not too far away, has theatrics and what have you, and nothing done about it.
So we had a situation here, and a few years ago, where Jason Ford was I don't know what word I'd use, but anyway, by a manager, and what happened after it. Yeah. Do you know?
We won't dwell on it anyway, lads. We cover that, I suppose, as much as we can. But just back to what Waterford will bring, and I suppose to look at some of their key players, and who perhaps from the Tipperary team will be deployed, David, to pick up some of the Waterford key men, and how will they go about it?
My fear is that they'll stack their forward line with their key men, the Gleesons and the Hutchinsons and the Bennetts, and if they go like that, they're a formidable forward line, and I think if you can put some control over those key players, you're a long way down the road to getting the result you want. I think the likes of maybe Dan will be looking for Austin Gleeson again. Who's going to pick up Daisy Hutchinson? I imagine it'll be Cahill. I thought Johnny Ryan in the league did a really good job on him.
He did a
really good job because Johnny he's a super. He's got great pace,
and Daisy Hutchinson got 1 point at the very finish.
Yeah.
Off from that day, I thought Johnny Ryan was on his toes, on his heels all the time, never let him. Get going.
Yeah, so you're always looking to the danger and the guys who can score, and I think if you can keep some type of tabs on the likes of Austin, the likes of Bennett, not conceding frees is another area. I don't know what the stats were last week, but again, Dermot Burns got an awful lot of opportunities to score, and the free takers are such now. Frees are going to convert into a significant amount of scores. Is to keep the free count down. And simple little things like that will go a long way to getting the result we want.
Yeah, and I suppose if you look at it as well from a Waterford point of view, they're coming to Thurles, but this will be their third time coming to Thurles this year. So they'll actually have played more matches in Thurles than Tipperary will at this point in time. So there's no absolute. I know obviously Thurles probably the best pitch in the country, so there's no disadvantage to playing in Thurles anyway, but there's definitely no disadvantage for Waterford coming to play Brian against Tipperary this Sunday in Thurles. They're familiar with the surroundings, they're familiar with the pitch. As you said earlier, the only disadvantage that they may have on Sunday is that they may not have a big crowd following them.
Yeah, sure. Isn't it their home venue this year? And as you said, they've played all their home games in Thurles. There's no hurler in the country doesn't like coming to Thurles, to tell you the honest to God truth. It's I suppose the following and the supporters. There's a lot of disillusionment in relation to their performances, say from Ennis last year against Clare, where I suppose Liam was the manager and they downed tools in the middle of the game, to a decent performance against Limerick. I suppose the sending off was a factor in the Clare game. It was in the Clare game, the sending off, wasn't it? And they got a woeful start against Cork. There were 12 points to 2 down after 20 minutes against Cork. So they're a Jekyll and Hyde outfit, and you just don't know who'll turn up. They'll love. It's going to be warm. It's going to be a nice day. They're coming to Thurles, Munster Championship, and they've no pressure on them now. That's, I suppose, from a Tipperary perspective, the one concern. A Waterford team with no pressure on them, and if they're left hurl and left go, some really serious players around the middle of the field and in the forwards. I know Austin Gleeson has been struggling all year with fitness in terms of picked up injuries, but I think he's had a clear run at it for the last 2 weeks, and appears to be going full throttle possibly for the first time this year. So he's an enigma. He could turn up on the edge of the square next Sunday and score 2 or 3 goals in a flash. You just don't know. And if that happens and Waterford get ahead of steam up, it could be a very dangerous place for Tipperary. So it's a game where our own performance is the key thing, and I know the management will know that. They have to plan for Waterford, but with Davy, you just don't know what way Waterford will line out. I'm sure a team will be named, but I wouldn't be putting my game plan based on the team that Davy will name. So it's a case of get your own house in order, win your Munster semi-final, get into the Munster final.
I think Brian is right in that. If in the present situation with Waterford, if Tipperary can get a score up quickly, it could knock the heart out of them, and they may not have the stomach to fight given their current situation. But as Brian said, if they get up ahead of steam and start getting scores, our backs could be to the wall.
And David, we'll just maybe, before we conclude, your feelings, will we do it, and will we be back here in a week or so's time discussing a Munster final against Clare?
I think we will do it, Jonathan. I think we will. There's been too much effort and progress put into this team since the start of the season, through the league and through this championship. I think it would be unbelievable if the Tipp team wasn't mentally and physically right for this coming Sunday, and they know it's in their own hands. And I think that's what I was saying earlier on. Liam will have their mindset correct, and there's so many good leaders in that group as well. We mentioned Noel, but the likes of Ronan, Michael Breen, Brian O'Meara, these guys, they won't let this opportunity slip, and they know the enormity of the match. You don't need to be reminded of the need to produce a performance, and they're the type of players, they always produce when they are required to produce, and I've no doubt they'll produce a performance on Sunday. And if they produce the performance that they're capable of giving, they're in a really good position to win the game.
Yeah, and Brian, I suppose there is another twist to the game on Sunday. Obviously, Tony Brown involved with Tipperary, but your own clubman Owen Kelly involved with Waterford. That obviously for Owen comes with its own pressures. For a man that has played with Tipperary, loves Tipperary, and now he's coming up against his own county, and potentially could be involved with a team that actually could, end their involvement in the championship if other results went against him.
Yeah. I know, we don't see Owen on the sideline with Waterford. He's in the background. I think he's probably in the stand, viewing things from there. He's certainly involved in coaching. He did speak a bit on WLR, and put it up to the Waterford players to a certain extent following recent performances. From his own point of view, you throw your lot in with a team. It's the same as Liam coaching Waterford. You throw your lot in, and he's 100% committed to helping them achieve what they can achieve. Yeah, it's obviously it must be an unusual place to be for these guys. I know, Liam did it, Owen is doing it. Like, if you look around at what Waterford are doing, and you have Dan Shanahan involved with Laois, you have Tony Brown involved with Tipperary, the Iggy is involved with as the goalkeeping coach in Wexford, and as one of the Waterford mentors involved with the Cork setup with Pat Ryan, and they seem to have guys there that they could put a team together, a Waterford management team together, and I'd imagine that's not too far away in the near future. I have a feeling that's where it'll go. But yeah, unusual for Owen to be coming to Thurles, tried to help Waterford to beat Tipperary, definitely. But that's where it's at. I don't think we can ignore the form in terms of what's happened over the last few weeks in terms of this game. The psychology of hurling has gone to a new level, and it's the psychology that's that extra 1% that gets you over the line now. Probably way more so than when we were playing, Dave. So I think, you know, the headspace of the Tipperary players and the headspace of the Waterford players there's a distance there between the two of those, and I think that'll be the difference on Sunday with Tipp getting a victory.
And Michael, I presume you would agree with those sentiments.
I would. I think the key to it for Tipperary is to start well and start with purpose. And as I say, if you can get a run on them early enough, they may not have the heart for a battle given their current situation. And I think that's the key to it, that we need to get down to business straight away and stamp our authority on the game and take it from there.
Okay, well, obviously the game is 4 p.m. this Sunday in FBD Simple Stadium, and as County Chairman Joe Kennedy said during the week, we would really appeal to all the Tipperary supporters to come along on Sunday, get behind the team, be the 16 player, for want of a better word, and hopefully that with your help as supporters and with a great performance from the team, that we will be preparing hopefully for a Munster final in a couple of weeks' time. That's our show for this evening. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we look forward to speaking to you in the very near future. So until then, from Tipp GAA TV, it's goodbye and thank you.